Welcome to Whangarei Matters, a brand new podcast from Whangarei District Council. This series will give us a deep dive to explore local issues in detail, and we'll be taking your questions and ideas about what topics you want to explore. Today's episode is on the future development strategy. And who better to talk about Whangarei's future than the future of Whangarei? Local teenager Leah spoke to Senior Strategic Planner Hamish Sykes to find out more.
What do you do at Whangarei District Council, Hamish?
So I've been at the Whangarei District Council for the last 4.5 years. Admittedly, I was only supposed to be here for a year or two, but I see my role as being able to shape and influence the delivery for long-term outcomes for Whangarei. And the way that I do that is we undertake a lot of research. We do a lot of analysis around it might be things like population growth or development. And that really helps to build an understanding of what some of the challenges are. But I think most importantly, as part of my role, we do a lot of extensive engagement and facilitation with our local councillors, with tangata whenua or hapu, as well as other key stakeholders like our community and central government. And that's a really important part of the role, because ultimately it's about trying to come to a collective view on what is it that we're working towards for Whangarei, and how is it that we may look to align might be our planning or the way that we are delivering infrastructure in Whangarei.
Okay, so what is this future development strategy for exactly?
To answer that, we probably need to understand the problem that we're trying to solve, because all Tier 1 and Tier 2 councils, so that's essentially your high growing areas in New Zealand.
Okay.
We're all required to prepare a future development strategy, but the context of what you're trying to solve may be different. So in Whangarei's case, we know that over the next 30 years, we need to accommodate approximately 40,000 more people. That's the sort of growth that we're expected to see. Within the next 30 years, we've got another 17,000 new homes that we've got to look to accommodate. But we know that we've also got to try and provide for a greater choice in terms of what you and I, the sort of home that we want to, live. But we also know that we've got a changing environment. Climate change is going to become more prominent. So how is it, as a district, are we going to respond to that? So I guess with that in mind, the future development strategy, essentially, it's our growth management plan. And it's really about how is it, as a district, are we going to be accommodating for the long-term housing and business growth and needs over the next 30 years. And ultimately, how is it that we are going to, how is it that can we collectively respond to, the changes that we are anticipated to see.
So I've got a bunch of questions here I'd love to ask you. They're not in any particular order, so I might jump around a bit.
Looking forward to it.
With all this new growth happening, what will be changing with the transport that we are currently using?
Big question, and it can be quite subjective at times. But as part of the strategy, one of the key messages that we've got to come to realise is, for many of the issues, that we can't build our way out of these issues. So it's, in some cases, it's about utilising what we've already got. So one of the key themes from the future development strategy is we're thinking about the type of growth that we are planning for, and that's really looking to grow within our existing urban areas.
Okay. And
what that allows us to do is it helps to provide higher quality and more frequent public transport service. It also helps to open up new options around safe walking and cycling options. But we also understand that in Whangarei there's still, I think it's 40% of the population who are living in your coastal and rural communities. And and their only access to transport is with private vehicles. So if we can provide for greater choices within our urban areas, reducing the reliance and the dependency on private vehicles as a whole, it's going to go a long way in terms of mitigating some of those congestion issues that we may face without action.
Okay. Because the future development strategy includes emissions reduction, will the council be promoting the use of electric vehicles?
Good question. I think for the Whangarei district, one of the key emission points for Whangarei is around our transport system. Electric vehicles, that's one part of the solution, and I think there's ways that we can work with other infrastructure providers like North Power to enable for that longer term transition. But in terms of what council's role is in terms of looking at that emissions reduction, it's about making sure that the infrastructure is in place to support more use of other transport modes like walking and cycling and public transport. And of course, in a district where our population is more dispersed, electric vehicles are going to be a really important part of that long-term emissions reduction.
Are there any plans on getting public buses, so trains, open to the public?
Great question, and I love it. I think we, with a 30-year document, we should be aspirational. There's a lot of work that has to be done, and that's particularly around how the strategy is going to be implemented. But encouragingly, we are, through this strategy, heading in the right direction to at least explore the opportunities around passenger rail. So things like compacting the way that we're building. So thinking about utilising existing urban areas is going to be a really integral part to whether those longer term options around passenger rail are realised. But fortunately for Whangarei, we've got an existing infrastructure rail network that we can utilise. But at this point of time, the economics, the feasibility, and the overall population that we have in Whangarei, it's not there at this point in time, but we know that over the next 30 years and beyond, our population is going to grow, new opportunities as part of that growth will arise.
Okay, and I know we're going to be building lots of apartments or on existing buildings, probably in Northland and especially in the town centre. Does Whangarei have the resources in general to make this happen?
So council's role in terms of enabling this to happen is, it's about ensuring that our infrastructure is there to handle the growth. That is it's a costly exercise, but the issues around our waters infrastructure, transport infrastructure, these are universal to majority of growing councils in New Zealand. So we're not alone. Local government as a whole are facing some real challenges in terms of how infrastructure is managed, but also how growth-related projects are delivered. And I think the benefit of the strategy is it's really acknowledging that council is only one part of the solution. And that's why we've really taken an extensive engagement program with central government and with other infrastructure providers to come to an aligned position on how we can, support these sorts of outcomes that, our communities want to see, such as apartment buildings, townhouses and terraces.
So do other governments in New Zealand have the same idea as Whangarei District Council? Other councils in New Zealand have the same idea as Whangarei District Council?
I think as a whole, New Zealand, the conversation around housing, I think, has really matured over the last 10 years. the overall acceptance to townhouses and apartments has universally improved. With, you know, for Whangarei, we've still got a long way to go. You know, this type of living is it's relatively new for communities, and I think that's going to take it's an ongoing effort to take the community with us. But as a whole, in terms of how councils are responding, you know, there's an acknowledgement that intensification, you know, apartments, you know, smaller housing typologies are a really big part of the solution to the infrastructure deficits, to the protection of highly productive soils, but also as part of that, the longer term need to support those emissions reductions.
And because there are going to be so many apartment buildings in the centre of town, will we need more stores and shops around that area? Like, will we be expanding the town in general?
So I'll come to that question in a minute, but I want to understand from your perspective, what sort of shops are you talking about? What do you have in your mind? Is that more, you know, the Whangārei shopping centre? Is it things like that? Or are you thinking about your smaller?
I'm thinking places where the people living in town can get essentials, because if we're going to have that many people living in the same place, we're probably going to need more stores.
And you're right. And I think the fabric of what these stores look like, in terms of the building design, that may change. So you may see within let's use the city centre for example, you may see a greater use of what we call mixed use development. So might be your first floor, that may be your commercial hub, that might be your shop, or it might be some sort of community facility. On the second or third floor of, let's say, this mixed use development, there may be an element of residential. So there might be an apartment, a 1 to 2 bedroom home on top of your shop. So I think the way that we're thinking about the types of buildings, you know, over a 30-year period, we will see some change in that sense.
Is there any option to stop growing?
It's an interesting question, which we receive fairly frequently. As part of the natural growth that we are experiencing as a district, that's a natural process, and that's a combination of you know, your birth to death ratios. So that's as in terms of what council control, that's out of our hands. However, as a council, what we can influence is where and how growth is to take place, and how growth is to be managed over time. So essentially, the value of the strategy is that as a council and as a community, we are the ones who get to set the outcomes that we are seeking from this growth. For example, we have a choice on the type of growth that we want to see, whether it's looking to better utilise our existing urban areas, which helps to promote public transport and all the good things that come with that, or we can look to develop in a way that's going to restrict and minimise the lifestyle choices to our changing community.
What are the risks of not developing our district fast enough?
I think from a community angle, the worst case scenario is, you know, more and more people become homeless. You know, for Whangarei, we've got an enormous housing need. You know, I think it's about 615 people currently sit on the housing register. But again, in some ways, I would frame this as what are the effects of poor planning. You know, we've got to ensure that we are catering to that longer term growth, but I think we've got to really have a clear picture in terms of how we're wanting to grow, and that's again thinking about the areas that we're looking to enable for expansion. It might be thinking about where we're looking to prioritize the upgrades to our water network. These are the tools that council have to influence the outcomes that we're going to see on the ground over the next 30 years.
How are you going to ensure that the apartments are affordable so everyone can access them?
As a council, our key responses will be our infrastructure, so making sure that the infrastructure is in place, but it's also about ensuring that our zoning enables for a wider range of housing choices. In terms of the affordability component, it's a challenging conversation as a whole. We've got limited mechanisms to influence the affordability, but the general rule of thumb is that by providing more choice. So, for example, we as a district, we have very limited access to apartment buildings, and general rule of thumb, if there's a shortage of a certain type of housing typology, there's going to be more demand for that type of home. If we're able to flood the market or increase the access to apartments and to townhouses, there's a general market response that the affordability and the overall access to these types of homes is improved, and therefore it has a contribution to the affordability of the home. But I will also acknowledge that there are, ongoing changes to the way that we're delivering homes, not necessarily council, but looking to other stakeholders. There's growing opportunities for the rent to buy schemes, which really helps to target those lower to medium income households to essentially have access to a home. Do you like the document, by the way? No.
I do, actually. It's really colourful.
Well, you've got to say that because I'm here.
Oh, did you write it?
I wrote it.
Oh, that's pretty cool. It's a lot of writing.
Well, it's only the start. There's a supporting document, which is like 200 pages. That's just writing. So that's not really for yourself.
That's like an entire book. I wish you luck.
What if I ask you a question? What do you want to see in Whangarei?
Oh, but that's kind of a hard question. You think about that.
Actually, I'm going to ask you two questions. Firstly, do you enjoy living in Whangarei? How long have you been in Whangarei for? Your whole life?
Yeah, I've been in Northland my whole life, and currently I live just by Hikarangi. And yeah, I enjoy living in Whangarei, but I think we should have more activities for teenagers and younger people.
Yeah. What sort of things?
I don't know. Probably like rock climbing or more activities like that. Outdoor activities, preferably. So
you want a district that caters to, I guess, everyone's needs. You want things that you want to go and do, rather, maybe it's the district or the city's not catering to the things that you'd like to do in your weekend, or?
Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
Yeah, okay. Was that the second question?
Yeah, we're good. We're good.
Okay. How can we maintain the cultural heritage of Whangarei?
I think firstly to that question, I think we can probably do better than maintaining the cultural heritage. I think, we are moving to a place where our communities want culture and heritage to be protected and actually celebrated within the district. And what's really integral to all of Aotearoa New Zealand, but particularly for Whangarei, is ensuring that we are honouring te tiriti o Waitangi. And actually we've seen the results of what this actually looks like in our public places. If you think about Patahi Park, the new park down the waterfront, that's a real, it's a great example of where the cultural narrative has been used to really, make more of that particular space. But culture in our communities, we've got a really diverse population, and that trend is set to continue over the next 30 years. So this is about ensuring that we are providing opportunity to showcase language, culture, expressive form of arts and events. And while the strategy itself, we've talked about it being a growth management plan, it's very much infrastructure led. The other side of the coin is, what makes a well-functioning whangarei. And for many, it's about ensuring that we have a sense of belonging, and you feel connected and you see yourself within a neighbourhood or within a community. So again, it's the use of, all of these other community tools that, help to bring, a cohesive and generally a connected community and connected by culture.
And do you think cultural events like the food festival, bring people closer together? Community close together?
100%. And the food was awesome, by the way. You just see the photos, you see the turnout. And again, that's what community is all about. And I think that's what Whangarei is about. It's celebrating all the different ranges of cultures, and actually building not only an acceptance of different cultures within our community, but it's also an understanding of different tikanga.
And so our next topic will be, what does it mean to have a resilient district, and how do we get that?
It is the word of the month, actually the word of the year. And going through the future development strategy process, I think what's been really evident is that we've got a lot of alarming environmental risks that actually have some sort of impact on majority of whangarei. And these issues aren't actually going away, and in most cases they're going to be exaggerated. I've actually got a couple of stats prepared which I think help to highlight the issue. From our studies, 68% of the district has a moderate to high landslip risk, 68%, and we've got 44% of commercial and mixed use zoned land, which is prone to flooding. So these are, they're not only financial risks, but the community risks. So how do we get that? For our strategy, we are really clear that the approach for Whangarei is ensuring that we are looking to minimise new development out towards our coastal and rural communities, where we know that the impacts around natural hazards and climate change do worsen. The strategy, we do talk about a mix of infrastructure solutions, but also looking to better utilise some of our natural assets like our blue-green corridor. Unfortunately, we've got the screen shut off because of the lighting, but you've right next to the council building, there's an example of a blue-green corridor. But it's about ensuring our rural and coastal communities are going to be hugely impacted and may feel isolated at times. So as a council, we do have a really important role to ensuring that we are building resilience into those key arterial routes. And I think, we saw it with Cyclone Gabrielle in Whangarei, and actually down in my hometown in the Hawke's Bay. The impacts of our changing environment are undeniable. So it's about ensuring that we are, with our planning decisions and the way that we're thinking about our infrastructure, that we've got that lens across everything that we do.
And so this future plan, it accounts for climate change in the future?
Yes, absolutely, to the best available data that we have. Fortunately, through this process, we are required to review the strategy every 6 years. So that's about ensuring that we, the information that we're working with is, it's the best information that we've got. And that's, that ongoing review and making sure that climate change is considered is, it's an integral part to the way that we as a council are to function and are to, operate.
Okay. I'd also like to ask, are rural areas expected to change much?
I think there's two sides to that question as well. I think the growth within our rural and coastal areas is limited. We talked about the resilience factor just before, but the focus of the strategy is to focus growth to those to what's already been zoned. We're not proposing any new additional development to what's been previously planned. So things like coastal inundation, flooding, protection of highly productive soils, and historical quarry areas. These are all, contributing factors for why we're not proposing significant growth to these areas. But the other side is that, this shouldn't be confused with progress. Like while you may not see as much population growth within these areas, it doesn't mean that as a community you can't progress, because we know that 40% of our population, they still live within these areas. So it's actually, it's actually working within those communities to understand what are their local aspirations, and often within these, let's say, more isolated communities, they are really well equipped. The community's strong. So again, it's understanding what support they may need from a council perspective. That might be in the form of placemaking initiatives, your adaptation planning. Again, thinking about the long-term environmental changes that these communities may experience.
So, what are some of the future challenges facing Whangarei District Council?
I think this is a question that we probably could dissect for the whole podcast plus more. And, when we think about challenges, sometimes they can be subjective. But for the purposes of, the future development strategy, I'd break this down into 4 sections. Challenge 1 is our infrastructure. As a district, we do have some pretty fundamental infrastructure challenges, which are having real impact on the way that communities live, but also the way that our environment and our economy function. So, as an example, you think about the Brynderwyns and how they've been closed, or how they were closed for however long it was months. That had a enormous impact on the economic activity for the whole region, but it had a real impact on people. It's infrastructure is, we use infrastructure every day. So I think when you see something go wrong, it's obvious. Like you don't need to be a planner to understand when something's not right. But we also know with our infrastructure, we've got some really challenging issues around our water infrastructure. And again, it's becoming increasingly challenging to keep up with the growth of our city. The second challenge, I would acknowledge that, we've got a changing environment, and this trend is expected to continue over the next 30 years and beyond. So we're expected to experience more severe and frequent weather events, again, like Cyclone Gabrielle. That is an absolute worst case example. But as a district, we are highly susceptible to a changing environment, but we also have a number of natural hazards that require careful management and planning for. The third aspect is slightly different, but it's more around that, that population growth and the change that we are expected to experience. I've talked about the growth that we're going to experience over the next 30 years, an extra 40,000 people approximately. But actually, when you look further into those numbers, it requires really careful consideration. We know that over the next 20 years, our aging population, so from 65 to 84, that's going to be the highest growth for Whangarei. So what does that mean? What does that mean in terms of the services that we need to provide, the type of housing, where they're going to live? And at this point in time, are we taking that into account? Are we putting in the right measures to plan for? We also have a really high disability population. 1 in 3 people are actually living with some form of disability. And at some stage of our lives, all of us 3, including the cameraman, we are going to experience some sort of accessibility challenge. So again, the question I ask is that through our planning, are we taking the right measures to plan for that? And the fourth challenge, and sorry, I'm going on for a bit longer here, but it's around that housing need. I talked about the 17,000 new homes that we need to plan for over the next 30 years. But the challenge we have is the types of homes that are currently not available in Whangarei. It's the, majority of homes around that 3 to 4 bedroom standalone house. That's still going to play a really important part to, Whangarei's growth, but that only caters to a certain proportion of the market. So for myself, for example, do I need a 4-bedroom family home? No, I don't. However, do I have access to a 1 to 2 bedroom apartment? Somewhere that's central, that's close to the bars, or close to your other facilities. Whangarei currently doesn't have that. So that's the challenge. Ultimately that's the problem that we're trying to solve.
But will there also be more houses being made, not just in the city centre and apartments being made?
Yeah, absolutely. So while the strategy is to focus in more on those existing urban areas, as a council, there's been previous planning processes that has enabled for development outcomes on your urban fringes. So that's catering to one type of market. That's still gonna take place, and that's still going to be a really prominent part to the way that as a district that we do grow and develop. What the strategy is proposing is that as a council we're ensuring that we're taking the right actions to provide for another sort of lifestyle choice.
Are there any big controversial ideas in the strategy at the moment?
I say no. I don't say they're controversial, and while I can accept that there is change proposed as a result of the strategy, I think we've been really careful in the way that we've managed that change over time. What we're proposing isn't going to happen overnight. It's a 30-year document that requires some significant investment from council, but actually from a wide range of different stakeholders. And we've taken into account that the transition for Whangarei, it's for people who are living in, might be into Kamo or into Kensington, change can often can be quite a scary thing. So it's there's a duty of care in the way that we're going about this strategy, and I think that's the beauty of the next stage when we do get to consult and we get to hear from the community. So I think that's a really integral part to, I guess, better understandings where there may be some pinch points or some concerns amongst the community.
And for our final question, I would like to ask, how can we have our say? So how can the public have their say on what happens in the future development strategy?
So from the 3rd of August to the 2nd of September, we're going to be undertaking a public consultation process on the future development strategy. And as part of that consultation, we're going to be running a number of drop-in sessions, which will be made available to all of the community. Supporting that, we're going to be running some other tailored sessions, which may be required for, businesses and for tangata whenua. And I think, on reflection, a few months ago, Council, we ran a series of social media posts on our Facebook page. Definitely go and check it out if you've got time. But what it really did indicate was that there was a lot of interest in the type of work and the type of change that we are proposing within this strategy. And the reactions that we had to those posts were awesome. People were genuinely engaged in what we were trying to achieve, and I think that's going to be the case when we do go live with it for the community. And it's what we are trying to do for the consultation period, again from the 3rd of August to the 2nd of September, is that we want to get as much of the community involved, because at the end of the day, I think all of everyone who lives in Whangarei, they care. They care about where we're going as a district, and we know that this piece of work, it matters.
I think the episode's actually going to come out on August the 3rd.
So yeah, people can go onto the Whangarei District Council Have Your Say page. So that's wdc.govt.nz/Have Your Say.
Well, just to wrap it up, thanks for coming in and having a talk with me. It's been very informative.
Thank you. Honestly, today was awesome, and I hope that over the next month, while we engage with the community, that we get to really dive into more of these sorts of questions. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.